Today, I would like to talk about the value that we can find in our experiences of dissonance. Okay, dissonance is the kind of experience we have, a very uncomfortable tension that we feel inside of ourselves when our actions don't really line up with our beliefs, or when the circumstances, our experiences of what's going on in our lives don't match up with our convictions, our deep beliefs, or our desires, right? So whenever there is this mismatch, misalignment between what we're doing or what we're experiencing and how we feel inside of us, we will experience some kind of dissonance. Now, human beings, we're kind of wired in a way to avoid the discomfort of dissonance, right? So we have this need to be authentic. It's wired into us. It's built into us. I like to think of it as a great grace that God gives each and every human being, that there is some kind of a compass inside of us that nudges us and makes us uncomfortable when our inner life or our inner convictions and beliefs don't align with our actions or what's going on in our external lives. Now, of course, this compass can be numbed over time, because one way of avoiding the discomfort of dissonance is to shut that internal compass up, right? So we learn to ignore how we're feeling inside. We learn to just, for example, choose to take in the data that our external lives tell us, or how well we're doing, for example, by the values of our society, of our colleagues, maybe even according to the values of our family. I say this because even our family systems, while we are part of it and it forms us, it's still something external to us, right? So sometimes even the values of our family systems may actually violate what's inside of us. So there's literature coming up now, from the field of psychology, talking about how every child, every human being, have two equally important needs. One is the need for authenticity, so the need to be true to who I am, where I am, how I am in this moment, right? The second equally important need is the need for attunement, or the need for attachment. We need to experience being loved, right? We need to experience that we are loved, that we're connected with others, that we belong to a community larger than ourselves. But our need for authenticity and our need for attachment, well, they're equally important, and they're like basic rights even. I've heard it described as like they're kind of basic human rights, to be who I am, to be true to who I am, and to be loved. Unfortunately, so very often, these two deep basic needs often are in conflict, right? And I'm sure you have experienced that in your life before. That who I am truly, what I need, or even what I feel in the moment, if I am to be true to that, I risk rejection, ridicule, criticism from my community, whether it's my family, my parents, my colleagues, my faith community, my church. This is something that's very real. I am just describing reality right now. Okay, I think the first step that often gets glossed over when we talk about the interior life, when we talk about spiritual life, we often gloss over the most important first step, which is we must be able to look and behold reality and acknowledge what is real before we try and make determinations or judgments as to what is right, what is wrong, what is ideal or what is not ideal. We can get into all kinds of messes because we abstract, we go into the world or the realm of just abstract ideas and arguments and philosophy and theology, and we lose touch with what is here and now and real. And genuine spirituality, genuine faith, always takes place in the stuff and the matter of our daily lives, of our real, concrete, very specific human experiences. Okay? So what I was saying earlier is that I'm just describing, right? I've described for you that we have these two competing and very basic needs, One is for authenticity and one is for attachment. Now, because these two needs are often in conflict in our lived experiences, we will tend to choose one over the other. And when we are very young, it is a matter of survival to not be rejected, right? We need to belong to our families. We need to be safe with others, with our parents, with our caregivers. So many of us learn from a very young age, now and then to sacrifice our authenticity in order to receive that attachment that we need. And because our real life experiences of attachment, so often very conditional, is just another matter of fact, matter of reality, that while we all long to be unconditionally loved in this world, love is often imperfect and conditional. It is the way it is. And so the effect on us then who need love often is that we lose track of who we are. We lose that important connection with our inner compass. Our inner compass that, you could say is our conscience. And I think it's even more than our conscience. It's just this, sometimes it's like a gut sense, a gut feeling. Am I aligned with who God created me to be? Right? It's not even a cognitive, conceptual understanding. It's a bodily felt sense of I'm home or I'm not at home. Right? So when we are authentic, we will feel like we are at home. Things sit right. This is right. I'm at peace. Within myself, I'm at peace. When I have to be inauthentic to perform in order to please someone else, to meet expectations, whatever it is, to win approval or to get honor or to get power and wealth. I mean, what I just named are common ways in which we try and feed our insecurities, right? Because where does the insecurity come from? Again, from not being loved, because we need to be loved. We need to feel like we belong. And when we feel like being who I am is not enough, not good enough, or there's something wrong with the way I actually am, so I'm insecure. And in order to get that attachment that I need, I may go after honor, wealth, power, approval, popularity, whatever it is, whatever happens to be maybe easier for me to access given the talents or the gifts or the qualities that I have, right? So if for example, I have the gift of the gab, so maybe I might use my eloquence to get people to like me. Someone else may be really good looking, and then they may use their beauty to receive the affirmation and the popularity, maybe from a popularity to let them have a sense of worth. Someone else could be highly intelligent, really capable. Even if they may not have the best people skills, they know that their intelligence and their ability can bring them up the corporate ladder, for example, give them power, which makes them feel like they're in control, and that can make them feel better about their insecurities, right? So those are all just different ways that we try and get something else to fill that emptiness inside. But when we do that, there will always be an experience of that dissonance. Now, I want to invite you. I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, if you're watching my content, reading my content, listening to my podcast, you're interested in the interior journey back into being your true self. You're interested in the struggle that you're having about being real, right? Now, if this is true and you are interested in how can I become more authentic, or I do not want to continue to live a lie anymore, right? Maybe one of your experiences could be that the external reality, when people look at my life from the outside, it looks wonderful. Maybe I have a really good job, I'm doing very well, I'm materially well off. Maybe I'm even somebody who is respected in my community. As someone who has grown up, Catholic and who has always valued my faith, one big part of my identity in the past, I think more so in the past than now, is that I need to be seen as somebody who really knows my faith, really practices my faith, that meets the expectations of others, right? So it's still outward, external based. In fact, I used to feel like God is also a spectator watching me, evaluating me, and judging me. I believed he loved me too. But it was like there was this other part, that I needed to perform to win his affection. I thought that even with God, my authenticity need and my attachment need would be in competition. Now that clearly actually really isn't true. I mean, God is probably the only one that we can be sure where our need to be authentic, to be the person that he created us to be, even in our confused and messed up and sinful state, that we, as we are, we can be honest about who we are, where we are right now, and that we are completely loved and accepted by him, right? So it is in this hope that there is in God, that we can find this place where we can really be at home, that I am going to talk about why dissonance is a blessing. Okay, why our experiences of this dissonance is a blessing. Because our experiences of dissonance, of this tension, right, that we are not aligned, they are actually invitations to come home. They are clues in our life, kind of breadcrumbs in our life that are reminding us, you're not home. You're not at home with yourself. You're not at home with God. Right? And so no matter how well you might be doing, no matter how hard you may be striving, you are living on fumes. You're like a beggar for crumbs, for anything that makes you feel a little bit more secure that you're worthy of love. But none of that can last. None of them can last forever. No matter how capable we are, no matter how rich we may be, how powerful we are, all these things can just go at the drop of, a hat, anything. It can disappear. We could lose everything that we have at any time. So none of that is really real. And I think deep down inside of us, we know that. And so there's this fear and there's this dissonance, right? That's why there's always this dissonance that no matter how well things are going on the outside, I feel like something's not right. Sometimes this can be innocuous. So let me give you a couple of examples from my own experience, my own story. Okay, everyone's journey is unique. Okay, so some of you may really relate to my story, and some of you may think that's really, that's like so far from my experience. So if that's the case, I invite you to try and understand the principle behind the story I'm going to share, and you look for what that's like in your life. Okay, so in my life, the experience of dissonance since I was in school has always been that I tend to do well by the metrics that are important, I think, in my life or in my world. So in my family and my society, in my schools, academic performance is important. And while I was never like the top student, I was one of the better ones, right? And I was smart enough, I think, to get noticed. I seemed to display some, enough talent or leadership or maybe eloquence. Like I said, I have the gift of the gab, right? I have enough giftedness to attract attention and to be given opportunities. But here's the thing. I think my whole life I was trying to guess what is the magic formula that will give me that security that I am lovable. What do I need to be? What do I need to do? What is the combination of gifts that people want to see? That's because I think I never really had that security somehow that just being me was enough. I tended to be liked, I think, or rewarded by those in authority for displaying certain traits and some other traits that are really genuinely me. For example, as a kid, it's still a case that I am this way now, okay? It's just that I'm coming back into my true self only more recently. So I've always been really curious, really bold, and really quite mischievous. And I think that's a wonderful trait now. When I look at children, I think that's a wonderful trait. But it tended to get me into trouble, right? So it's like my intelligence is welcomed, but not my boldness. Maybe it's a cultural thing, being Asian, being a girl. I'm not sure. I'm sure that has a part to play with it. And there's a part, that has that may be part of the story, right? But so what I often experienced since I was a little girl in school, even to when I was at work, was that some aspects of me people really liked, right? Like my bosses really valued, my teachers really valued. They liked my eloquence, my outspokenness, but only when my outspokenness met what they wanted to hear. Right? When I was voicing my own questions or doubts, I was maybe asking difficult questions because I was seeing inconsistencies, that wasn't welcome. And I would know, it was kind of made known to me that's not welcomed, right? So I had to be obedient. I had to learn when to speak and when not to speak. But it was always a little tricky because I wasn't learning how to be truly prudent. I was learning to be diplomatic, but it was just so that I can avoid being in trouble, so that I wouldn't be scolded, I wouldn't be criticized, so that I would continue to be liked. Now, one of the ways that this dissonance manifested was when I was in graduate studies, when I was in graduate school. So I was in graduate school for a total of about 5 years, doing a master's and a PhD that I never actually finished in the end. But you see, I did very well according to if you look at the academics of it. I was one of the top students. I somehow managed to get accepted into enough conferences to maybe present a paper and all that kind of a thing. I won scholarships and fellowships, but I didn't really believe in what I was doing. I was still looking for something to believe in, in terms of my work. I was really hoping to find something I felt convicted about, but I wasn't feeling it. And that experience that I was doing well, or even that, for example, when I presented at a conference that I did very last minute work on because I really didn't care about it. I didn't care about the paper I was going to present. It was one of my course papers. I did the minimal amount of work I could to talk about it. But it was met, I remember at this particular conference, it was met with such enthusiasm. People were genuinely interested in the work that I was doing. They were asking me questions, asking me if this was like my dissertation topic, my PhD, thesis topic. And actually it wasn't. I still hadn't decided at that time what I wanted my topic to be because I didn't feel deeply about any of this. Now, for someone else with a different temperament, maybe that's not such a big deal. But for me, if my internal value system is not aligned with my external actions, I actually kind of like, my system hangs. Okay, my system kind of hangs. It's very hard for me to proceed. But which is probably why, now looking back, my work, my life's call is doing this kind of work that I'm doing right now, making this kind of content that you're watching right now, about authenticity, right? About integrity, about integration, because that's how God created me, to be very sensitive to a lack of authenticity, even within myself and in others, and a lack of integrity within myself and in others, right? Okay, so but back to this story of dissonance. So it was a very uncomfortable experience for me. I felt truly like an imposter. To be congratulated and, in a sense, affirmed. To be good at something that I really felt I didn't really put an effort in. I couldn't be proud of my achievement because it seems like people thought it was an achievement. I didn't feel it was, and I couldn't be proud of my work because I didn't believe in it. So that's an example of dissonance, okay? Another experience of dissonance, kind of different, okay, guys, some similarities but different, was sometime after I already been working full-time in ministry. I was getting known, because when I guess you become a bit of a public figure, at least within the parish, I realized that people started attributing things to me that was not true of me. I'm not talking about bad things. I'm talking about even good things, okay? Things that my radar didn't even pick up, things that honestly I didn't care enough about because it's not the kind of thing that attracts my attention. It's not the kind of things that my gifts and even my charisms kind of focus on. When something good happens for someone in need, there was once a situation where I was thanked. It was attributed to my intervention. And even when I told that person, I had nothing to do with it. Okay, I really had nothing to do with it. I don't even know how it happened, but it's nothing of my doing. The person in question insisted or really continued to believe that I was just being humble, that I was denying that I had anything to do with it. And I didn't know how to tell him, I'm sorry, but I'm not as kind as you think I am. Oh, this area, which is a very important area, thing, is not in the area, it's not the kind of thing that I would do at all. I would have nothing to do with fundraising and collecting, needed necessities for people, suffering in another country, right? So this was an instance of, I think, some natural disaster in a different country, and in the parish there were efforts to do a donation drive and to collect all these things and to arrange for them to be shipped to the place where people are in need. And it's a very laudable and noble and important initiative, but it's really not the kind of thing that I do. And I often still feel a bit ashamed about that, even as I'm learning that we all have very different gifts and very different kind of calls, right? So, but that's another example of dissonance where I felt like, what is it that I'm doing here, even at work? How am I presenting myself? That how I am perceived and where I kind of feel like I need to be or who I am, it's just this very big gap, right? So I'm not saying, of course, that there can be that there will always be, I'm not saying that we can reach a point where how people perceive us is exactly who we are. Because I think that's always the point, right? People will perceive us how they need to perceive us, how they wish to perceive us. Sometimes they project their issues or, whatever it is that shapes their perception of the world onto us. But I think I was feeling that way because I was still in the mode of I need to meet a certain kind of criteria about what it means to be someone in full-time ministry. Being a disciple is important to me. And I had some idea maybe about the ideal of what holiness should look like, what a mature disciple should look like. Maybe vague, but something's here and there. And maybe I was trying to present myself or make myself align to that imagined perception of what being holy should look like, being a mature disciple should look like. And that was causing dissonance because it was different from how God made me and from the way perhaps my particular path to holiness is meant to look like. So for me, the interior journey into authenticity included a lot of surrendering and giving up of my inability to measure up to my own mind's idea of what spiritual maturity should look like. And that also coincided with maybe failing to measure up to what other people may think spiritual maturity should look like. Okay? As I say, a Catholic or as a member of the church and the community. But I am learning that unless I come home to myself and have faith in the design that God has given me and to learn to obey Him rather than be so concerned about how I will be accepted or perceived even by my friends, my family, my community, unless I can be true to that need for authenticity, I will never know what true belonging is. Because true belonging and attachment isn't just being attached or being connected with others. It is very much being connected with my inner self, with myself. Can I offer that attachment to myself? Will I love myself unconditionally? If I'm only concerned about how other people see me, love me, oftentimes I'm not in touch with myself and I'm not able to accept and love myself. That's actually more important. And how can I build that self-love? By experience the perfect attunement that God has for me, the perfect love that God has for me. Because like I mentioned earlier, with God, it doesn't matter what state I am in currently, who I am, what I'm finding out about myself, whether it's good or bad, or what I'm finding about how broken I am or how, all that stuff. It doesn't matter I'm perfectly loved by God. And that is the security on which I can build myself back out to become my own person and to be confident that there's a purpose and a reason for God who created me the way I am. Now, one big reason why many of us will struggle to lean into this dissonance that I just described, to recognize that this experiences of tension is actually a blessing because there are invitations to come home to ourselves. Many of us will struggle because of trauma, okay? Because of our past experiences of being rejected, being alienated, being abandoned, even emotionally abandoned, right? You may not be physically abandoned. I used to think that abandonment meant physical abandonment, like someone is literally not there physically. And while that is clearly abandonment, it is only more recently that I realized and learned that the effects of emotional abandonment are just as real, and a person can be physically with us but emotionally not with us. All right? So when we've experienced being alone for so long, that no matter how hard we try, it's so hard to experience being loved for who we are. A lot of us, we abandon ourselves. And when we abandon ourselves, it includes deciding that we can't trust our own feelings, our own physical, so we can't trust our own emotions and our own feelings. So feelings go beyond just emotional feelings, right? Feelings include our physical, bodily feelings, and they're often connected. Like our emotions are often connected with how our body feels, how our stomach feels, our gut, the tensions that, the tense neck or tense shoulder, back pain, headaches, stomach issues. A lot of times our bodies are sending us signals that we're in dissonance, okay? That there's a tension, something's not right here. But we've learned to ignore those signals and to just keep pressing on and pushing on in our endeavor to win security by performance, by performing and being whoever it is that we think we need to be, whoever it is we think others want us to be. Right? So I just want to invite you to think of the ways maybe in your life you've experienced dissonance, the ways in which you have experienced how others see you, or the external metrics of your life seem to indicate something very different from how you're actually really feeling it inside. Now, this is especially the case if you're someone for whom your spiritual identity or your identity in your religion or faith is very important to you, because let me tell you, it is not just in so-called worldly contexts that we fall into the traps of being inauthentic. This is very much the case for those of us whose identities are also, our identity in our faith communities is also part of how we see ourselves. And the more active we are in our faith communities, especially if we're in leadership positions, we are very vested in being seen as good examples, role models, and usually, without us realizing, there is some kind of ideal in our mind about what it means to be a role model, how it should look like to be a leader. And when the reality and truth of our inner lives and the reality and truth of our most intimate relationships with our spouse, with our family, with our parents, our children, for example, or even with those who are close to us, when the realities there do not reflect the beautiful image that we wish to project for others to see, we experience dissonance. We will experience the pain of being inauthentic. And I want to congratulate you if you can recognize that in your life. I want to invite you to look at that in the face, to not run away from that. I know it's uncomfortable. I've been there. I'm still there. I mean, so many ways. It takes a lot of grace and courage and safety to be able to see how we are inauthentic, see the lack of integration and integrity in our lives. But I want to say and invite you to see this as a blessing, because we cannot be happy in this state. And this discomfort is the same as, when we're cut, we bleed and we feel pain. That pain, as uncomfortable as it is, it's important, it's a blessing, it's telling us that we need tending to, that we're wounded, right? We want to be restored and healed And that's the case for our inner lives as well. So my invitation to you is recognize, try and identify and recognize and acknowledge some area in which you are experiencing dissonance in your life right now. And can you invite and ask God, okay, into that dissonance and to show you that next step that you need to take? What step can you take to move towards greater authenticity and integrity? I know that's a big question, but for today, the step I'm asking you to take is just to be able to identify, recognize, and acknowledge. Really look it in the eye. Don't run away from it, right? And say, yes, I experienced this dissonance in my life. And can you be honest with yourself about how it feels and whether you actually want it to be there? Not so much the dissonance, I know you don't want the dissonance to be there, but whether you want to move towards authenticity. That the way into the way out of that dissonance is not to shut your inner compass up, to shut your gut, and to deny your need for authenticity to be real, but that the way to resolve this dissonance is for your outer life to mirror and align with your inner life, and for both really to be integrated by God. So I'm praying for you, and I hope that you found today's chat challenging, but also hopefully comforting and edifying.